Welcome to Above Zero, the podcast where we have vulnerable conversations filled with courageous testimonies of overcoming. So what is zero? Zero is when we come to the place of surrendering to Christ, accepting his forgiveness, and our sins are wiped clean. I am your host, Amber Love. Welcome to the journey where life begins above zero. Today's guest on Above Zero is Ms. Neisha Himes. Neisha is a multi-award-winning and nationally recognized activist and motivational speaker. After leaving a 5-year-long abusive relationship, Neisha began telling her story years later via her gift of spoken word, and to date, uses her talent as a method of bringing awareness. Neisha is more than a survivor, as all survivors are, but she uses her lived experience to spread awareness. Neisha founded G.R.O.W, Girls Recognizing Our Worth Foundation, Neisha Christine Consulting, LLC, and has served as a victim advocate in places such as the Norfolk Commonwealth Attorney's Office, Newport News Police Department, and today she will be sharing her next exciting position. Neisha's unwavering dedication to end domestic violence and passion for helping others is the driving force behind her motto, "I will not shut up." This episode contains discussions about domestic violence, which may be distressing for some listeners. Please take care while listening and know that you are not alone. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, help is available. You can contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 or text START to 88788 for support. Please join me in welcoming our guest testimony today, Neisha Himes. Neisha, thank you for living life above zero with us today.
So, I'm Neisha. Thanks for having me. My story, when people ask, I say, all right, what version I'm going to tell? Is it the short one, the middle one, the long one, or whatever? But here, just feeling real safe in this space. And I feel like it just can just be as transparent as possible. So, come from a 2-parent household, grew up in Jersey, 3 sisters at the time. I now have a little brother he's younger than my kids, but that's it. Okay. But anyway, 3 sisters. So grew up in this close-knit family in suburbs of Jersey. I have 2 children, son and a daughter. My son was maybe 3 years old when we moved from Jersey to Virginia. Yeah. So eventually I would meet who would become my daughter's dad. We had a relationship that ended. So I would say about 25, 26 years old. I'm now a mom with 2 young children. So I'm not going to say single mom. I was a single woman who had 2 children because I did have help, with them. But I will say just this woman who had 2 failed relationships that were they lasted for a long time. Right. And then I'm at this place where I know that I didn't know my worth, but in hindsight, back then, I thought I did, right? So at the time, I was working at this law firm.
How long ago was this again, though?
So, my son just turned 24. That's on my age, right? My daughter about to be 18. So this is over, I would say 20 years ago at this point, me moving to Virginia. Yeah. So eventually, I'm working at this law firm, and I had a coworker, and she was like, I think that you would be good. You should meet my brother. Y'all should talk. And I was like, girl, I just got out of, my last situation 6 months ago, not really interested. She's like, no, I think y'all would hit it off. I think, y'all funny. You both love to dance. You're silly and all of that. So it was just I wasn't really pressed to do it. But then she wound up having a birthday party and he was there.
Coordinating it.
And I remember I was sick that night, NyQuil, coughing, sneezing, headache, all of that. And I still went to this party. And I look back and sometimes I think God, when I think about God making moves in people's life, I look at it almost like chess, we're going to make this move and then this is going to happen. Because I feel like every move in your life, plays a role in where you are today, presently. I really believe that. So,
and if you know that, I feel like if you understand that, once you have that revelation, you can start making moves strategically to get you where you want to go. Yeah.
Right. So I meet him at this party and we hit it off. And I remember he asked me for my number at the end of the night. And at first I was hesitant. I was just like, no, I kind of got out of something some months ago, not really sure. But then later that night, going home, and I said, well, why not? Why not cast my net back out there, other fish in the sea? So I hit up my coworker / his sister, which had me, his sister. And I said, hey, can you just pass the number along or give me his number? And connection was made. And then this was before, as I say, Netflix and chill. This was like Redbox. And what you doing? Like, right, that's like Redbox and kick it. Like was, so everything was cool. It was, we had a similar sense of humor. We liked the same things, and everything seemed great until it wasn't. So just to speed that part along, I noticed things, or I didn't notice at the time, but knowing what I know now, I know there were things like signs that I missed. Just if I didn't answer the phone, I would say like in 2 rings instead of 5, then it was like, who was you on the other line with, or who was you talking to, and things like that. And I know a lot of it had to deal with his insecurity over the co-parenting relationship that I had, particularly with my youngest child's father, because my oldest child's father was in New Jersey.
Okay.
So
were they involved still?
As far as
with your
so my daughter's father was very active in our daughter's life and in my son's life. So he was like a father figure to my son and very much active in our daughter's life. Okay. So just some sort of insecurity there. And this person had children too. He had identical twin daughters, and his relationship, he said, oh, she's crazy, she's this, she's that. But you look back at that and it's like, okay, was she really, or was it?
I think we're starting in the dating world, we're starting to really call that out for people. Yeah. Like, hey, if they're talking poorly of their ex, they're going to do the same to you and just
right. And it's looking like, okay, he's like, I don't understand like why he knows where you live. Because it would just be like, okay, I'm dropping baby girl off at this time or picking her up at this time. So it's like, why does he know where you live? And I'm like, you don't know where your kids live? No, I don't. We meet at Walmart or whatever. So that's
unfortunate for you, sir.
But so it'd be like, who are you talking to? Why you didn't pick up? Was you talking to your ex? Is he over there? Kind of thing. I do spoken word poetry. So I would be at open mics whenever I could if the kids was with their dad. And then it was, who's at the open mic? Who are you talking to? Or it might be on the flip side, like, well, I thought that we could just really spend some time together
and make it seem like, oh, I just
really, I just love spending time with you. I mean, if you don't like me as much as I like you, just say that, because I always want to spend time with you. If you don't want to spend, so it's that manipulation, that gaslighting that you're really not looking at as gaslighting, because we're not taught about that. We're not taught about the early signs of domestic violence or intimate partner violence. You're taught that physical abuse, but you're not taught what's love bombing, the grooming, the manipulation, all of these things. So there were things that he would do that I didn't like, or I thought, okay, this doesn't make me feel good when he acts this way. But I thought, well, maybe he's just a jerk, or maybe he just had a bad day. And then he would apologize and say, oh, I wasn't serious. I was joking. You're overreacting. So eventually I find myself like not really going to the open mics or not really hanging out with my friends, or any time that I had away from my children, it was spent with him. And then it became just...
And what was he doing?
You mean like...
when he wasn't with you?
Right. And then it's crazy because like fast years later, I would find out like after this whole abusive relationship that he was the one cheating the whole time, which is nuts. I'll tell you that. Yes. Nuts. But so then it became like name calling, but he would say, if I asked a question, he would say, doesn't take a genius. Like, what are you dumb?
Yeah.
And then that would offend me, but it's, oh, I was just joking. You're overreacting. You're being too sensitive. Or if you wouldn't make me so mad, I had a bad day, or I'm stressed out. So then you start internalizing these things. And here I am, a woman who already didn't know my worth when I entered into this relationship. And then I'm letting somebody else dictate my worth too. So just to fast forward, it became blatant disrespect verbally, like telling me I was worthless, would never amount to anything. I have 2 kids, 2 different dads. I'm working a dead-end job. I'm always going to be stuck in a cubicle. At some point, I had to get a second job at a local sports bar to help make ends meet. So I was working part-time, like Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And there was a time when he came in and posed as a customer, and I had to wait on him. like,
but if anybody knew that he was your boyfriend, would they have allowed him in, or would he not?
So he was complaining to my manager about the service and the food, which we know abuse is about power and control. He was like, "Oh, my chicken fingers are burned, or it's taking long for my drink." So I'm getting yelled at
by both sides,
right? And I didn't feel like I could say that's just my boyfriend trying to be controlling or trying to monitor who's talking to me or anything like that.
Because that brings in work drama, and they're like, "Hey, take it somewhere else."
Right, take it. And I mean, and I don't know how transparent or real we can get on this.
Okay, hold on.
We got the disclaimer.
This is the perfect place for me to introduce. We keep it hot.
Okay, cool.
Humble,
open,
I can say
transparent.
Whatever. Okay. You can say what you need to say.
Okay.
Because people need to hear it.
Right. Because all right, cool. Yeah. Because I appreciate that.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
So I remember that job, like him telling me I was a walking STD, a walking cunt, or whatever, however he worded it for me working at this bar. So he came to see who was talking to me, who was like trying to get my phone number, anything like that. But this is before it had gotten physical. So even though I know something's wrong, I know that a lot of times he doesn't make me feel good about myself. Then there were times where it was a good times. We're making chocolate chip cookies together. We're having inside jokes. We're joking, and you're taught domestic violence. I had this preconceived notion that it was always bad, that it was always abuse, and that wasn't the case. So when it was the good times, it was confusing because then this person has it in them to be nice to you, to treat you right, and
you want to help them
get better. Maybe they're misunderstood, so you start taking it, thinking like, all right, but if I am more of this or less of that, then I'll have the good version of this person all of the time. And by the time it became physical, I was in a situation where financially struggling really badly, and I lost my home. So this is me working a full-time job. My daughter's dad is helping, but he's helping with our daughter, but I still got all these bills that I can't take care of.
It's hard
and
to
I wind up
have single income with kids.
Right. And I lost my home, and I'll never forget like knocking on my neighbor's doors and saying, "I'm being evicted today. Come in here and take what you want."
Wow.
And my son was in Jersey for the summer with his dad. And my daughter, she was maybe like 2, 3, and she's holding my hand and asked me why they're taking our stuff. So they're carrying out paintings, they're carrying out, just dining tips, everything. And then what didn't get taken, it was just left on the curb. And I just felt, just as a mother, just the lowest of the low. And then I'm in a relationship that I don't recognize as abusive, right?
Yeah.
So what happens? I wound up staying with a friend. She told me that I could stay with her. So I stayed with her for a little bit, but then it gets to a point where I'm like bouncing from friend's couch to friend's couch and what my life looked like. So at this time, I'm working for a large mortgage company. I got a good job, and nobody knows at work that I'm essentially homeless.
Yeah. And
my family, I'm very, very, very close with them. I didn't tell them what was going on. My dad lives right here in Hampton Roads now. He moved to VA before I did. Didn't tell him what was going on. I'm disappearing off the face of the earth, like not going to open mics, not hanging out with my friends, completely being isolated and isolating myself. So nobody knew what was happening. So my day literally consisted of going to work. Okay, so I lose my home and I send my kids to go.
Where's he? I always want to be like, where is this man that is controlling you? And
so during the process,
and I'm gonna let you go lose your home.
So that's a good point. So I'm staying with a friend, and so he never knew that I was bouncing from couch to couch, house to house, or whatever. Because if I told him that, I feel like he would accuse me of sleeping around. He would accuse me of doing whatever, God knows what. So there were times I was staying, like Red Roof Inn became my best friend.
Yeah.
There were times I stayed in my car. There were times I remember staying in a friend's garage. It wasn't insulated and it was freezing, and just being afraid to have a space heater on because I was worried it would like catch fire in the middle of the night. So I would just be freezing, bundled up in these blankets. And my kids stayed with my daughter's dad. So I knew that they were safe. They had 3 square meals a day. And every day my day consisted of getting up for work, going to his house. He had a whole girlfriend. They're married now, God bless him. But at the time, girlfriend, and go to his house, see my kids off for school, like breakfast, make sure you brush your teeth, make sure you got your homework or whatever. Then and this is maybe 2 years into dating my abusive partner. So my daughter is probably like 5 years old at the time, because I dated him for like 5 years. So she might have been like 3 years old at the time. It's kind of want to make sure I keep the timeline straight, because, you know, when you replaying it in your head. But anyway,
I do that all the time, and people have to, you know, interject and ask questions.
So. So she was young. My kids, so my son might have been like 8, 9. So 9. So either way, I would get up, go see them off for school. I would go to work and pretend like everything is okay. And I remember I would go in the bathroom and have like panic attacks. Like people would right around 5 o'clock say, "Oh, I can't wait to go home and watch Judge Judy," or "I got some chicken in the crock pot," or whatever. And I'm like, all right, where am I sleeping tonight? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then I would get off work, go back to my ex's house. Meanwhile, current boyfriend doesn't know any of this is happening. Go back to the ex's house, help the kids with their homework, make sure they eat dinner, make sure they get in a bath. And then I would put them to bed. My daughter would be like, "Why are you leaving?" My son's like, where are you going? And then I would go find somewhere to sleep. So again, Red Roof Inn was my best friend. If I wanted to sleep in a bed, because it was expensive, I would get to these hotels at like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. And maybe this one was full. So now I'm driving to another one, right? So I would get there just to sleep and then wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and leave. So I've essentially paid anywhere from $80 to $130 just to sleep.
Yeah.
So then that's where it was like, all right, I'm going to thug it out in my car. I'm going to thug it out on this couch. I'm going to thug it out on this floor, or whatever it is that I have to do.
To save the money too, because as you're trying to build up, you're just giving it all away.
So boyfriend, he thinks I'm just staying with one friend and that my money is going towards paying her rent. Where really a lot of times it was going towards a hotel room, right? So he says one day, "Well, why don't you just stay with me and save your money, and then that way you can get a place?" And I said, okay, because I just wanted to save money to get a house and get my kids back. So I stayed with him, and then that's when the physical abuse started.
Yeah.
And the first time he assaulted me, I had come home from work late, and he accused me of being somewhere I wasn't. And at this point, I was tired of the years of being berated verbally and emotionally and made to feel small and made to feel like I was worthless and never going to amount to anything. And I remember he was sitting with his back. So we were sitting on the bed. So his back is like towards the wall, and I'm sitting on the edge of the bed, and he's calling me all kind of names. And I was just like, you know what? I'm done with this. And I reached down, and my purse was right to my left and in between the space between the bed and the wall. And I picked my purse up, and when I turned around, he had a pillow, and he slapped me so hard with this pillow that I fell between the space of the bed and the wall. And it didn't hurt as much physically as it did like my pride. And I was just like, wait, what? And I mentioned Jersey. So I jumped up like, wait, we about to square up. Like, what's going on? And he fought me like I was a grown man who had just robbed him like the week before. Like he fought me like I was a grown man off the street, a stranger. And that first assault included strangulation. And we know that strangulation, if you've been strangled by your partner, they say now that you have a 750% higher chance of being killed by that partner. And for that first physical assault to include that, and I remember his eyes, he had these green eyes, these green hazel eyes, it looked like almost black.
All black because the pupil dilated.
It's just, and I said, wow, I'm going to die in this space between this bed and this wall, and nobody knows where I am. And it's the things you remember. Like, I remember what I had on. I remember kicking him. I had these really cute leopard heels on and kicking him. And when he let go, and I'm fading in and out of consciousness, and his eyes, the pupils go back to normal. And I just jump up and I'm like gasping, and I run out this house. I run out his house. He runs out after me. I'm crying hysterically, but gasping, and he's crying, and he says, I don't know, like, I'm so sorry. It's never going to happen again. I was stressed. I was that. Just please come back. And I walked right back, eventually walked back in that house, because where was I going to go?
Yeah.
So this went on for some time. And the last physical assault, when I tell people my story, I say the last time he physically assaulted me was March of 2012, but that's not the last time he abused me. And they'll be like, oh, but you said he last physically assaulted you. I'm like, because domestic violence isn't just about physical abuse, right? So he was accusing me of, I worked overtime on a Saturday. Ironically, there was a banquet for a nonprofit that helps like homeless women in domestic violence. And I'm not thinking
that's you.
That is me. Like, I'm not thinking.
What were you thinking?
I just said it's unhealthy. It sucks. But you're taught. One, you're not taught about it for real. But then what you do hear in the streets, like I remember growing up and having friends who were in abusive relationships and saying things like, "Girl, why don't you just leave? Like, what you staying for? Why you don't get out?" You know. And then you find yourself in one, and that's what I tell people. By the time you realize you're in one, you've been in one. Yeah. You just now realize it. Yeah. So even when he started physically assaulting me, I thought because I fought back, well, I fight back. So this ain't abuse. I'm not some woman just cowering in the corner. This ain't abuse. Like I defend myself, right? But by this last time, and there was a lot of in this time and this time and this time in between the first time and the last time. But I was tired of fighting and just being at this banquet. It was at this hotel in downtown Norfolk. And I sent pictures of the banquet hall and how we decorated it. It looked like a wedding. And I guess he zoomed in on a picture because he said, who are those two guys carrying a table? So I had to like zoom in on my phone, and you could see two guys way at the end.
The audacity of men existing in your space.
Right. So you see two guys carrying a round table in, and I was like, I don't know. So then he started calling me all these names, and you went to work to go be a whore, and you're this, and you're that, and I never should have trusted you. I should have kicked you out, and all of these things. And at this point, it had been name calling, it had been physical assault, it had been strangulation. You threw my stuff out in a snowstorm, you popping up at my job, you calling me incessantly, you're emailing me incessantly. Like, it was already really bad. It was the little microaggressions, like a Valentine's Day, he got me proactive once because he said he wants my skin to be clear the next Valentine's Day. So even little things like that, and you're just like, said, I'm done. I'm done. So I left my job assignment and I said, I'm coming to get my stuff. And when I came to get my stuff, and this time I had just gotten a new phone. It was back when I was doing the Androids back, and so I had the Galaxy, and I didn't know how to work it. I tried to get in he had this back door, like you would come in, you would be in like the laundry room, and then you would open another door and wind up in the living room. So he was on the other side. I'm in the laundry room, and I hated being in there. I was like used to be locked in there sometimes. So open this door. I'm trying to open the door. He's tugging the door on the other side, and it was like he was trying to break down his own door. I was like, just let me get my stuff. And he just breaks down the door, and it was the worst of all the physical assaults. And I was trying to call 911. I couldn't figure out how to get and just remember the phone was being knocked out my hand, and I didn't fight back that time. You got two hands, you try to figure out what to cover, face, ribs, what. And I just pray, and to God, I just remember saying, like, I'm done. Like, I'm done. So I just curled up in a fetal position, and it was the worst. And when I got up, I was screaming, and I can see it in my mind right now. And I had on a Bank of America t-shirt. That's where I worked for the mortgage company at the time. And I was pointing at my shirt, and I was screaming, look at me, look at me, look at me. I was working. I was just working. Yeah. And he moved my bangs out my face, and he kissed my forehead, and he told me I looked upset and asked me if I wanted something to drink. And he went to get me one of his daughter's juice boxes. And I grabbed what I could, And I went to my son's soccer game right after that. And the kids at the soccer game, they're like, "Hey, Miss Neisha," and they're running up and hugging me. And I'm like almost doubled over in pain. And after the soccer game, I go back to his house because nobody knows what I'm going through. I'm not admitting to myself what I'm going through. And try to pretend like the day was normal.
How did you hide all of that?
Right. And I'm like pretty light skinned, right? And so this is March. So I'm sure I had on like scarves and things like that. Because later they appeared and he would be smart enough to like not do stuff to my face. And that night I wound up going to the emergency room. And it was the first time I had sought medical attention for any of the injuries. And I kept telling him, I was like, something is wrong. Like something is wrong. And he's giving me advice like, oh, maybe you should go get it checked out. I didn't have health insurance or anything yet. Because I had just became permanent at this job. So went to the ER, the intake nurse at the front desk asked me what happened. And I said, I got in a fight with my boyfriend. And I never said that out.
Wow.
I never said it face to face anyone. Because there were times I tried to tell people before and it was met with like a laugh or whatever, like, oh, just leave kind of thing. But this is the first time I said it, like sitting in front of someone and saying it. And she asked me if I wanted her to call the police. And I told her no. And she took me into a room and she wound up calling the police anyway. And officer comes in and he says, first thing he says, I need a name. And I was just like, I can't give you that. And he said, I need a name. And I said, I can't give you that. And he said, why not? He said, you're a pretty girl. You're sitting on a hospital gurney. Like, why can't I have a name? And I said, because I have to go back there when I leave here. And thinking about like saying that out loud, and I can still see it, and thinking about the work I've done with the police department and things, and just seeing that officer probably had 50 DV calls that day, right? I wish that they would have had like to known, here's a hotline number, or this is how you can just be more trauma informed and talk to a victim of domestic violence or whatever. But he just gave me a card and told me I had a year to press charges and to call him if I changed my mind. And I left that hospital. I had two fractured ribs on my right side, a type 2 concussion, strangulation marks. But my spirit was the most broken. And he was like, why'd you go to the hospital or whatever. But to move forward, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, so I worked at the YWCA for a while as the shelter case manager there. And one of the things, like my job was to help them go and find housing. And there were times, not very often because I was good at my job, that they would come back and I'd be like, there's no housing available. And I had a girl who had 8 children, pregnant, which was a part of his way to control her. And she was like, I'm like, hey, we got to come up with a plan B. She's like, plan B is out. I was like, okay, plan C. And she's like, let's go to plan Z and start back at A. I got to go back to him.
Yeah. And it's like, I
knew it was true. I knew. I was like, I sat there with her and I was just like,
because my family, I'm so close with them, but I was so ashamed and humiliated. I know that if I would have called them, even my dad, who's right here in Hampton Roads, I could have been like, I'm in this bad situation, but I was so ashamed. And I had even called a shelter once who I won't name them. And, G.R.O.W has since done work with them. But I remember calling this shelter. I picked them out of, and I know now that it wasn't the shelter I was supposed to call because I lived in an area and you're supposed to call certain. And that was, but I liked the name. It felt empowering. Just, I called this shelter and they told me I wasn't in imminent danger because I hadn't been assaulted that night.
Within 24 hours.
Right.
Or something.
And for me, it was just like, I felt like my fear wasn't enough. Like I was just assaulted 2 days prior and was probably going to be assaulted tomorrow, but no, it wasn't tonight. But there was the
bravery it takes for those moments. And I understand because I worked the hotline for all the shelters. And I understand like, okay, they're all full. There's nothing, we can do. So we had to start filtering out. But there needs to be a solution for when people find the bravery to leave,
right?
Because that moment may be that moment.
And I never called a shelter again.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I started my nonprofit, because I wanted to be able to fit that gray area when the shelters are full or anything. But so there were times was trying to get help, and it was like walking into a brick wall. So he started going to therapy, and he was trying all these new tools and emotional toolkits to be able to better control his anger and his temper. So he hadn't physically assaulted me since March of 2012, but he continued to emotionally and verbally find ways, but thought because it wasn't physical, and I thought the same, that it wasn't abusive anymore. I even tried to volunteer at a shelter while I'm in my abusive relationship. I'm just like, I'm going to go help. Yeah. I'm going to have to tell that story soon, but I'm going to go help others. I
just want to say, I did the same thing. I was working with survivors of sex trafficking when I hadn't even started my healing journey. Right. But I just thought like, I think I didn't even realize that I was a survivor. Right.
I'm literally in an abusive relationship going to volunteer at a shelter thinking, well, I'm going to help them. But I think subconsciously we know, and maybe if we can be for someone else what we wish we had for us.
It's called the survivor's mission, right? So you survived and immediately something like that is birthed inside of you. And it's the passion that kind of helps you get up in the morning.
Yeah. Meanwhile, trying to escape my own.
Right, your own stuff, yeah.
I eventually got out of that relationship when the name calling, all those things still continued. And during the course of an argument where he was calling me out my name, demeaning me, humiliating me, he called my mother and my sisters, who were the women closest to me in this world, he called them the N-word. And why that's important is because this was an interracial relationship. So it's called Cajun male. And I always tell that part last because people say, well, what gave you the courage to leave? And it's like,
was that the line?
That was it. And what I've told, like, I've been asked that question, like, okay, you've had broken bones, you've been strangled, you've been just demeaned in so many ways, shapes, and forms, but it took that. And for me, it was like, it was one thing for me to not stand up for myself, but another thing for me to not stand up for the women who meant the most to me in this world, and they weren't there to defend themselves. So that ultimately gave me the courage to leave. So I still dealt with things and getting away from him for good. But you don't
have to go through the details about like how long did that take?
So I left at the end of 2012, but then I still have all these emails and things from like even going into 2013 and beyond.
And you just cold turkey, like stopped responding?
I would argue back. There was a point when I would stop, and then eventually I started dating someone else, not even healed, got right into another toxic situation, dating someone else. And he was like a quirky dresser. Like he would wear bow ties and little sweaters and things like that, and had these wireframe glasses. And then eventually that didn't work out because just two people trauma bonding. And here come back around, and he's like, I just want to talk. And I met up with him to talk, and he was dressed just like
the other dude.
Just like it was.
That's scary.
Scary. He was to the T. The sweater, the bow tie, the glasses. He doesn't even wear glasses. The glasses, everything. And he said, but this is what you like. So
what I don't like is being beat and manipulated and gaslit
And even then I tell people, I left in 2012. But when I say that, was it really 2012? Because I was still dealing with stuff in 2013. And
I think you were dealing with the residue of it. Yeah. Right? He was still testing the waters, but you left when you left and you survived that.
I did.
Right?
So,
and I think that's, first of all, thank you for not shutting up and continuing to share this vulnerable situation with everyone that you have an opportunity to. So I really, really appreciate that, because I think it's going to help a lot of people. People need to hear, wait, maybe that's what I'm experiencing. Oh, wow, she made it, and so all of that. but you're not there anymore.
Absolutely not.
You are not there. You are not the same woman.
No, not at
It's
all.
been years. Like we mentioned in the beginning, you got baptized a couple weeks ago or a couple months?
A couple months, August 11th.
A couple months ago.
Yes.
So
with my son.
tell us, where was God in all of that? And what was that process like? Like, how did he show himself to you in a relationship with him?
So God was everywhere, even when I didn't know he was. So, for instance, there was a time at some point throughout that relationship where I became very depressed, suicidal, even writing letters to my kids and my parents, my siblings, and just saying, I can't do it anymore. Like, I tried. And the only thing, like, I was always taught, if you take your life, if you choose to die that way, that you would go to hell. Like, that's what I was taught as a child. And we didn't grow up in church or anything like that. But when I did go to church, that's what we were taught. So I was afraid of going to hell. I mean, I was living in hell, but also afraid of resting eternally in hell, right? So that, and then I would pray to God to just, well, don't wake me up. Like, make something happen to me. Like, maybe a heart attack or something. Literally pray to die.
You take me away.
You do it.
Yeah.
You do it. And then he would wake me up. And when I tell it, I say it was so aggressive in how he'd wake me up, because the birds would be chirping, the sun is shining, my kids would be like, I did eventually get a place, like a home for me and my children. So, but I'm still in an abusive relationship when I get my home. So I moved out from him and then wound up getting my own place, but still trying to extract myself. Like, I'm still off and on in this abusive relationship. So, my kids are waking me up like, hey, I want some pancakes, I want French toast. And it's like a beautiful day. Or even if it's raining and I can hear the rain hitting the rooftops and all of these things.
He allowed you to feel the sounds,
right, the sensory, right? And it's just like, I thought I told you, don't wake me up. Like, and I would always say, why me, why me, why me, why me, why me, right? So there's a story I always tell my daughter. When she was little, she would call it the church story. And so I'm out of this abusive relationship. I'm in this home that I got for me and my children. I'm struggling again and trying to do what I can not to go back to losing another home. And something me and the kids did, we would always get Redbox movies. And one day, it's a Friday night, we would get Redbox. So I remember getting a Redbox movie like a Friday night. And I'm outside 7-Eleven and I send them to go pick out a movie. So I'm sitting in my car and I see these two women sitting at a table right outside 7-Eleven. And you could tell they were from like a church, and they were talking to people as they went in, and they were talking to people as they went in. And I said, I hope they don't try to invite me to church. I literally thought, why should they try to invite me to church? Soon as I thought that, one of the women at the table turned and looked dead at me and then got up and walked to my car. As soon as I said in my head, why is she trying to invite me to church? Watch someone come to invite me. She walked over.
God's like, yeah.
So she tells me her name is Neisha. And my name is Neisha, right?
Okay.
She's from New Jersey. And her full name was like Tanisha or Kanisha or something like that. Yeah. She's from Jersey. I'm from Jersey. And she invites me to church. And I was just like, yeah, okay, I'll go. Like, she's like, no, I just wanted to invite you, and no pressure. I said, okay, I'll go. And I just remember throwing the card thing into my car. Go, kids come back in the car. We have our weekend or whatever. Sunday morning comes and there's no food in my house, and my pride, I don't want to ask anyone for help. And I'm praying to God, like, please, the kids are like, I'm hungry. I need, when are we eating? Like, what's going on? Yeah. And I'm praying to God, just help me. Just help me. My kids literally have nothing to eat right now. Too prideful to call my family, too prideful to call daughter's dad who lives right up the street, and then my doorbell rings. And our doorbell rings. I open up the door, and it's my kids, their granddad, holding bags and bags and bags of groceries. And I mean, like eggs, milk, steak, everything, bags and bags. And I'm just like, wait, what? So I said, what are you doing here? He said, I just stopped. I just wanted to bring you some groceries. I just want to surprise you. So I said, all right, God, I'm going to church. Okay. So I drove to church, got the kids ready. Yeah. Drove to church, on E. I had no gas. Drove on E. Go to church, sitting there with my arms crossed the whole time. Just like, I don't feel like being here.
Before you, like, this is so good, but I had no idea that we had such similar situations. Like, I have someone who showed up at my doorbell when I said, God, I'm not going to be surprised when you show up in my mess. In fact, I expect to see you. Where you at?
Yeah.
Ding dong.
Where you at? See?
And I'll tell that story, someday. But then it got to the point where I got to church and I sat in the back row with my arms crossed. And I was like, all right, God, you got 45 minutes.
Yeah. That's pretty much was my attitude. I was like, what you got me here for? Like, what are you doing? So their church is churching. And the pastor, he's calling people up to get prayed over. They're going up. Last person comes up. And then he stops, and the only way I can describe it is like he leans over like someone's whispering in his ear, but there's nobody there. So I'm just looking at him like, what are you doing? So then he stops, and he turns, and he looks directly across the sanctuary, directly at me, and then he walks over to me and stands directly in front of me.
Oh, gosh.
And I said, oh.
It's the anxiety I was feeling. I would be like, not me, not me, not me.
Right. So then he tells me, he said, I don't know you. I don't know. He said, but I know what God told me. And he tells the church congregation, we need to, who can sow a mustard seed to this woman? So I'm thinking he's really asking somebody to pull a mustard seed out his pocket, out their pocket. With the mustard seed? And the person behind me pulls out $20 and gives it to the pastor, and the pastor gives it to me. Then the pastor takes pulls out all the bills out his pocket. They're like crumpled. And he tells the congregation, he said, I don't know who this woman is. We don't know her can of paint. Never seen her before, but I know what God tells me. And this woman needs help. This woman needs help right now. So the church lines up, and he proceeds he stands me up, and he's talking to me, but he's saying very specific, not you're going through hard times, you're struggling, like anything that could apply. He's saying things very specific to thoughts and things that I had been going through and experiencing, to where I was terrified. Like I wanted to run out of that church.
Like, how does this man know my life?
Right. And then the congregation lined up one by one, and they started putting dollars, like my hands are like this, and they're putting money in my hands, to the point where they're coming. So many of them, I back up and my back is against the wall, and my son has his arm around my waist, and my daughter's holding on to my leg, and the money is spilling from my hand. So then somebody gets like a purple, like purple, a purple, like a cloth, and lays it on a chair, and they just start putting the money on the chair. Children giving me coins out their pockets. The band comes down, a very pregnant woman waddles on over. And then the pastor says, all right, we're not done. He said, we're not done. They all come back again. And when it was all said and done, I remember taking a picture of it. It was like $347 and some odd cents. I later see Neisha, Kanisha, and she tells me that, and I'm a mess.
Wait,
I'm
who's
bawling.
Neisha, Kanisha?
The woman who stopped me who came up to me at the 7-Eleven, who came up to my car. She gives me this big hug. She tells me she wasn't even supposed to work that night, that somebody had called out sick for evangelist work. So she agreed to go, and that my car was the only car that she had gone to. She said it was like someone tapped her on her shoulder and said, go to her. So when I said in my head, why somebody come to my car and invite me to church? She's immediately, I can see it. She stopped and just turned and looked at me, got up and walked to me. And she said it felt like someone tapped her and said, go to her right now. And I never forgot that. I will never forget that story. And even just throughout that relationship I was in, I used to say, why me, why me, why me? don't wake me up. And he would wake me up every single day. And it was almost like, why not you? Why not you? Why not you? Mm-hmm. So now I know why me. Mm-hmm. Now I know why me. It's just different ways he's just always showed up, but just showing me I went through that, and he never left my side, because I could have been killed, you know, I could have been just disabled or anything, or just my spirit could have stayed broken, but I grew and I bloomed, and he continued to plant seeds, and I've met some amazing people because of the journey I've gone through and the experiences I've had, and I've been able to help and give back and do his work in my own way for other people. So
but that is crazy and amazing, and gives me all the feels. The whole why not me thing. If you actually go to my Facebook, to my videos, there's a dance that I do with flags, because I think I'm going to try to practice spoken word, because I just find it. I find it really intriguing, and I'm looking into it. But I used to dance a long time ago, and so I found these worship flags, and I just decided I'm going to dance with those. And just a quick story about this. First time I danced, it was like 3 a.m. in the morning. I was drunk. I danced to I'm a Survivor by Destiny's Child in my backyard until I was sober. And then the next time I danced, it was because I didn't know what to do. And the next time I danced, it was because it was the only thing I could do. And then the final time I still dance, but there was a final time that I danced, and it was because he was worthy, because he was holy, because I had to believe that regardless of what my circumstances look like, I was going to believe that you are who you say you are, and that you're good. And that final dance was when the chains for me really fell off, and I was like, oh, this is more than just not being in my situation anymore. But one of those songs, and I can't remember which one, was Why Not Me by Tasha Cobb. And at the end of it, so check it out, at the end of it, it says, so it's like, why not me, or why me? And then it turns to why not me? And there's like, I had this moment of surrender where I was just like, why not me? I don't have to understand why I was allowed to go through all of this. All I know is that his word says, I will use all things for the good of those who love me. And that scripture used to piss me off, because I'm like, I've been through some stuff. Right. So how are you going to use that while I was in it? Right. And now, as I've been walking out life, walking out my faith with God, and growing and learning how to do it, and stumbling, like it's not going to be perfect, because we're human. Right. But as I started doing that, I started seeing, oh, he's going to use all these things. Like I've just been touched by a lot of different things where I didn't have like years, of domestic violence. I had one situation that happened where I got thrown across a kitchen, and I fled, and I was in a city I didn't know. And then there was, 9 months of addiction. There was, 6 months of sex trafficking. There was some childhood abuse. There was adoption. There was all these different things. And I'm like, why have I been in spiritual abuse? That was the longest 3.5 years. And I just didn't understand, like, how am I supposed to overcome all of this? Right? Like everything. And now in the spaces that I work in the community, like I've gotten to meet you. I've also met so many amazing people. I have figured out that there's nothing that's going to surprise me at this point. I've been touched enough by each of these things that somebody can come to me and I can be like, I get it. Yeah. Right? There's that empathy for them that is just naturally built in me. And I now know what it takes to overcome. And now we're not going to shut up, are we? We are not shutting up at all.
I will not.
No, and I'm going to join you on that, but I'll let you keep it as your slogan.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's yours. It's yours. So, but I mean, tell me, like, what's next? Because, share with the listeners. We are so excited to hear your story today, and it's going to help so many people. But
thank you.
What you got going on, and I absolutely want to uplift any projects that you're doing and help you out that way.
So, again, this was just a great space. So thank you for having me. I have G.R.O.W. So G.R.O.W. is 8 years old now, and G.R.O.W. I have it on hiatus now for a couple of reasons, but I'm just praying to God to come back in a way that He has for it to come back, so that we can continue, if it's for us to continue to do crisis work for survivors, or if it's to focus on the outreach or whatever it is. And that's with the education through, I have Neisha Christine Consulting. So that's where I do the workshops and the trainings. I go to higher education institutions, churches, real estate companies. It don't matter, like community organizations where I do workshops, bringing awareness of domestic violence, what kind of violence prevention initiatives that they can implement. Also just working in the professional realm, as far as like having worked in the prosecutor's office and having worked in the police department. So I got to see that side of things too, from a legal standpoint. And I was telling you about— I
remember when you did that. I remember.
Yeah. I got to, so I was a DV victim advocate for the prosecutor's office, and then was able to help a local police department start their first domestic violence unit. So turning that pain into purpose and, turn lived experience into like changes for other people. And then the newest venture, I was telling you, getting a job with a hospital and as their trauma liaison educator. So get to train doctors, medical staff on how to provide trauma-informed, empathetic support to victims of violence.
Do you feel like this is the job right now that you've just been prepared for? Or are you like, this is another step in the journey and you're going to give this 100%, but
in case they're watching, I'm gonna say this is a job. No, I'm joking. No, I'm super excited. Like I'm super excited because I think it was written. Some of the people that I'm going to be working with, I've already worked with them in different capacities. I always envision myself like traveling and speaking, which I do, but just in bigger ways. And that doesn't necessarily mean bigger stages, but I'm talking about impact, because you can stand and talk in front of one person and that impact be just like life-changing. So I'm going to continue with the traveling and the speaking and all of that. But as far as from a 9-to-5 or professional standpoint, I'm super excited. I do think so, because it's setting a blueprint and getting into the high schools and doing more of the prevention.
So you're going to be able to go not just in the hospital. You're going to go to the high schools. Where else?
Implementing these programs, the community, everything. Everything. So essentially building this from this particular position, like from the ground up. I think this
is perfect. I think this is what you were created for, to be a boss. And you're so well respected in the community. And that is not just something you woke up with. Right? That was waking up every day when you were asking God to take your life, and he woke you up with annoying birds and sunshine.
I need to make I do testimonies on social media. I need to tell that story, but I'll be mad. Like this bird is loud. Like, I mean, I know he's happy, but dog, I'm trying to sleep. Like, what are we doing? Why are you so happy? And here I am awake, but.
And I've been in those moments, but it was a million of those days. Right? Getting up anyways, not giving up, pushing forward. All those little moments have created this atmosphere. And I think that's important for me to learn is because, as I'm starting out, I kept thinking, I'm not at the top, right? This is where you want to create some big thing. And everybody's like, hey, you got to start small from the bottom. And I was like, I'm just so tired of being at the bottom. And I had a friend say to me, Amber, you're not at the bottom. You're not at the top, but you're definitely not at the bottom because of all the days that you got up and didn't quit, because of the times where you showed up for yourself. And so that's encouraging to me. And so whenever I see you doing the next thing, like, just know I'm so proud of you and honored to know you.
I'm very proud of you. And I never forgot. It's something that sticks with me, and I talk about it often, is when you spoke at my event, a G.R.O.W event, and you asked the audience, and I was there as one of the members, audience members, and you said, who are you without your trauma? And I asked myself at that moment, because sometimes we get so wrapped up in the cause and the mission, and we lose ourselves in the process. And I learned that in a lot of ways, I was just on go, go, go. And it was about the mission. It was about helping. But in a lot of ways, I hadn't forgiven myself for what I went through. And I was trying to, it was almost like seek forgiveness from old Neisha. Like, well, maybe if I help one more person, and if I just help one more person, if I just help, then maybe old Neisha will forgive
It's like
this
earning
Neisha,
the justification of your forgiveness.
Yeah,
right?
but I no, and I know who I am without my trauma. I think I'm pretty dope too.
Yeah,
Just pretty fly. So, I thank you for that, and just it was an honor just for you to say this was the first time you had them sparkly shoes on. And you said, I'm going to wear these shoes for my first speaking engagement. Or so
it was, and just so for people who are listening, it was in a boxing ring, which I thought was so cool. You were the first person to pay me to come and share my story. It was $100, and you were like, I know it's not much, but like we're going into the red for this event. And I was like, I don't even care. Like, I ended up taking my family out to dinner afterwards, and it cost $100, you know.
Look at
but
that.
I've heard so many people say, you know, my first event was the price of a piece of pizza, you know, but I remember I was like, somebody is going to hand me a mic and trust that I'm going to like deliver. So I get up there and I take it and I do the thing, and the best part that I remember, besides the fact that there were a couple ladies that really boosted my confidence, being like, come on, girl, you better preach. And I was like, oh, okay, we're going to have church then.
You're right.
Was I had mentioned a song by Ty Tribbett, and as being one of my favorite songs, because he influenced me during COVID. Like his music was just gospel in a way that I could digest it and be set free. And so when I was done and I was like, you know, somebody get me on the stage. I don't know what to do. Your DJ played that song, and I was like, this is the coolest moment of my life.
I love
Even though everybody else was like being sitting proper, I was like,
you know. I love it. This goes hard.
So I guess we'll just end. Thank you. And if you ever want to come back, if you have more to share, this, you know, I want to come back and share your testimonies, the things that God is doing, and people will just get to know you and follow you from that as well.
Absolutely.
But thank you for living life above zero with me. And you have a blessed day.
You too. Thank you.
As we come to the end of today's conversation, we want to remind everyone that if you're experiencing domestic violence, you are not alone. Your faith, your community, and your strength can be sources of healing and support. God is always with you, offering comfort, guidance, and love, no matter the struggles you face. It's important to remember that you are valued, you are worthy of respect, and you are deserving of peace and safety. If you or someone you know is in need of help, please reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE or text START to 88788. They are available 24/7 to provide support, resources, and guidance. Heavenly Father, we come before you today with heavy hearts, lifting up those who are suffering in silence. We ask for your healing touch to surround them, your strength to uplift them, and your love to remind them of their worth. Guide them to find the support they need and the courage to take steps towards freedom and safety. May your peace fill their hearts, and may your grace be ever present, shining light in the darkest of places. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Remember, there is always hope. With faith, healing is possible.